Everyone, welcome to Knitting with Sherri. I'm going to show you how, I'm going to show you some different yarns, basically. First I have this, they're different thicknesses and different textures and sizes, and so there's one, and here's some worsted weight yarn, and looks like this. And you can kind of see, if I hold these here, different thickness and softness. And here's one that has it's kind of fun and has the fuzzy, and look how thin that is though. It's very thin with a little bit of stuff hanging off of it here. And then you have a more bulkier weight yarn right there. That's a worsted weight yarn. You have the silk yarn here, and look how thin that is. Very thin. And then you have a medium weight yarn here. There. And this one's a fine right here. If you can see that. This is a super fine. That one there, the silk one. Okay, so now let me show you the labels on these. We have a die lot number here, and the die lot number basically refers to the color, and what you want to make sure of is that you buy all, like let's say you needed 7 of these, and they only had, you got 6 of them with the same lot number and 1 with a different lot number. What could happen is, if you're doing your knitted sweater, or whatever it is you're working with, a blanket, whatever, if the other die lot number, you went ahead and it looked the same when you bought it, but when you went ahead and knitted your blanket or sweater, it's going to, you'll see a color variation, and so you don't want that. So you want to make sure when you do your project that they're all from the same lot number. Okay, so that your color, you don't have a color variation, and it does show, because I've done it before. So let's kind of go over some of the things on the label that you might see. So one, you'll have the brand of the yarn. You're going to have the yards and the millimeters. You'll have the ounces and the grams. It's going to show you what it's made out of, and this one's 100% polyester. Then it's going to show you this little bulk of yarn, and it'll tell you that this yarn is bulky, and it's a size 5, okay, bulky. And some people automatically know by this what needle to use, but some people don't. So they have these little charts over here, and inside the chart, it will tell you US 9 for the knitting needles. You can see knitting needles. And then it says 5.5 millimeter. And inside this box is a crochet hook, and it tells you US 10.5 or 6.5 millimeter, which are basically the same. Okay, so then it tells you here how to take care of this particular yarn. Okay, and it says machine wash and dry flat. Now this one over here says that you can, in other words, you don't want to dry this in the dryer, okay? And then this one it says machine wash and dry, and it's dryable. So you could do both. But it does say here, don't iron it. You see the X on that? Iron. This one, you're able to iron it, looks like. But that other one had an X on it. So you want to make sure that when you pick your yarns, you know how to care for them, because if you were to throw something in the wash or iron it and burn it, then that wouldn't be good. Okay, so I guess the next thing we're going to talk about is your gauge, okay, or swatch that you got to make for each. Every time you make something, your designer of that pattern is going to have a gauge. It's going to show it's going to tell you, the designer will tell you what size yarn and what size needle to use to make a particular gauge for that outfit. or for that, sweater. Okay. And so everyone knits differently. Some people knit tighter and some people knit looser. So there could be a variance there. But for the most part, you want to check your gauge. So let's, so needle size suggested, that's suggested in the instructions are guides. You don't actually have to use that, but if it's actually a pattern you want to use and they've already stated, they know, the designer knew which ones to use to, to get that sweater the way, it needs. And basically they're giving you those secrets so that you can make your own. Okay. So you will have to use, different needle sizes if you to get different gauges sometimes. Okay. So it doesn't matter what size needle you were using as long as you have the correct number of stitches in the inch that they're telling you. So, so when you've completed a swatch or gauge swatch, then you're going to lay it flat on the table, and you're going to either iron it if you're allowed to, and if not, you're going to pin it, but you're not going to stretch it when you pin it to the pin it down. So what you're doing when you do that, you're going to take the gauge ruler and you're going to do your measurements, okay, to see if you're ready to do your regular sweater. So in this instance, the instructions told me to do 5 stitches for 2 inches. So what we have here is I have a knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take on the edge of that knit row, and then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go way over here to my other knit row to make 2 inches. So I go knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches. So it took 5 stitches to make 2 inches, which is what they want. So I have the right needle size and I have the right yarn, and I have my gauge is correct, okay, for as many stitches as they said, 5 stitches for 2 inches. I'm ready to start my sweater, okay? So in that case, that's great, okay? But let's say that you didn't have 5 stitches. Let's say you had 4 stitches to 2 inches. Then it would be, your garment would come out too big, okay? And then let's say you had 6 stitches, more than 5. What's going to happen is it would be too small, okay? Because your yarn ain't big enough, or your needle is not big enough. So you can change needle sizes. So here's a rule: when you have too few stitches per inch, so let's say we had 6 instead of too few. Hold on. Let's say we had too few, which is 4. Then basically you're going to try again with a smaller needle, okay? Because you have too few stitches. Now, if you had too many stitches, you're going to try again with a larger size needle, and that might help your gauge, where it needs to be. So you may have to switch needle sizes just to get the gauge, and that's okay. All right, so but you definitely want to keep trying. Don't start your garment without having the proper gauge, because your garment won't fit you, and there's no point in working day and night for maybe a month on the sweater and not coming out with a nice sweater to wear. And so basically, let me go over one term that I need to go over with you, and that is work even. Okay, some people don't know what that means, and basically that means you're going to work. Let's say your pattern was a ribbing pattern. You go knit 2, purl 2, knit, purl. Okay, and you did that across, and you were going across. And then your pattern said, okay, now we're going to do the ribbing, but we're going to increase too and decrease and whatever until you're going along. You're doing your ribbing, and then you're increasing and decreasing where they said. And then the next thing, it says work even in pattern. Okay, so what that means is to stop increasing and decreasing and just work in your ribbing pattern. Knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. Okay, so now I guess what I'm going to do is we're going to go over, I'm going to open up a book and I'm going to show you a pattern. Hold on, I'm going to get the pattern. And we're going to kind of go over, let me move this real quick. And then we'll kind of go over what a pattern instructions look like and how to read them. Okay, so here we have a pattern. It's a quick cardigan, and if you wanted to make this sweater, it tells you kind of what brand. It says line brand, chunky weight yarn, woolies, thick and chunky, and it's acrylic, and so it's kind of giving you some information about what kind of yarn. Okay, so then it says down here, we're going to skip down to sizing, that the cardigan has an easy, comfortable fit with an 8-inch, 10-inch ease. All right, so when you get over to the instructions where it says size, you need to remember that, okay? So it is designed to be worn open at the front, but it has that ease, okay? So remember that. And then it has notes. You definitely want to read your notes. There's several notes sometimes in more than one pattern, okay? Or in the same pattern. So pattern, it says pattern is written for size small, okay? So remember that. If you are a larger person, you don't want the small size. So you want to go to the sizes that are in the parentheses, and I'll show you what that is. So let's turn to the next page. Okay, so when you get over here to this side, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to try and, but up here, there is what you call sizes, okay? And it comes in small, medium, large, 1X, 2X, 3X. And over here on this side, it says body measure at bust. So you have your bust sizes, and then it says finished garment measurement at bust. So this is the finished garment at the bust, okay? So it's a little bit larger than what is shown here, okay? And that could be because of the 8-inch ease, okay? 8 to 10-inch ease. So you want to be careful. Yeah, that's the ease put in there, okay? So that was from the other page we were talking about, the 8 to 10-inch ease. All right, so let's say you chose to do, oh, I want to just do a medium. Well, you can't just do a medium. You want to measure your bust, because if you picked, let's say you picked a small and you're actually a large, it's going to be too small. Or let's say you picked a 2X when you were actually a large, it's going to be way too big, because you remember the ease. Here's the 56-inch bust when you were actually a 46-inch. Okay, so that's a big difference. All right, so you don't want your sweater too big. So let's go with, we're gonna say we need to do a 1X. Okay, so now we're gonna go on to the materials we need. Okay, it states materials, and it tells you what kind of yarn to get. Line brand, woolies, chunky weight yarn in 6-ounce skeins. Okay, and what that is one of these skeins, or however you want to say it. And it tells you the colors they use, but you don't have to use those colors, and you can pick the one you want, okay? Because it says pewter, color number 152, color 104, wood, fisherman, color 99, color 99 for models, okay? The models in the book, okay? But you can choose any color yarn, as long as it's the chunky weight and it's in the, the different, and you don't even have to get line brand woolies. You can get a different brand, but you want to make sure the chunky weight part is the same in the same amount of ounces, okay, if you can fund it. All right, so then right under that, in the same section, they have how many you're going to purchase. You're not going to purchase all of these. You're going to find 1X, and that's it right here. And it says 7 skeins for size 1X. So you're going to buy 7 of these, okay, if that's what you're purchasing. All right, so then we have equipment. And the equipment you're going to use is, you're going to need, and if you haven't seen my equipment or accessories that you're going to need, a video, go and do that, and watch that. You'll understand this a little more. Okay, so size 17 needle is needed, along with a 14-inch straight needle sizes or size required for gauge. So remember, we talked about the gauge, and you can switch needles if you don't get the right gauge, okay? But it's saying that straight needles, but you don't have to use straight. You can go to circular needles and use those as well. And also, size, you'll need a size 10.5 and 14 for the neck edging, okay? And it says, again, straight needle, but you can use a circular needle. All right, I also asked you to get a crochet hook, size J, for correcting mistakes. See, we all make mistakes, so they want you to have one just in case, because we all drop stitches every now and then. Okay, 2 4.5 long stitch holders. There we go with the stitch holders. We need those stitch holders when we're working, because we're going to have stitches that we have to hold, because we're going to be working some and some we're not going to work, okay, as we go along. Size 13, steel tapestry needle or plastic yarn needle, and straight pins. All right, so the gauge, we're going to start talking about the gauge swatch that you have to make for each project that you do. You want to make a gauge, and in this case, it's telling us to work in a ribbed pattern. So here's the deal. When you work a gauge swatch, you always want to work it in pattern that you're going to be working your project in, because otherwise it won't fit this gauge pattern, which is 2 stitches equals 1 inch. So that has to be a very bulky, that must be the really bulky one. It's 2 stitches equals 1 inch. So it's a very thick yarn. Okay. And it says work in ribbed pattern. So here's the pattern. It shows you ribbed pattern right below that. And it says pattern row 1, right side of garment. And it has an asterisk. And it says knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch. And after, there's another asterisk, and it says repeat instructions between the asterisks across the row to the last stitch. So you're going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl all the way to the last stitch, and then it stops and tells you another instruction, knit last stitch. All right, I'm going to give you another instruction too. Here is a comma. Commas mean to pause. So knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch, like just our punctuation that we do when we grow up. We learn that. Here's a semicolon, and basically that means to stop, okay? And then the next instruction will pursue, okay? So repeat instructions between asterisks across the row to last stitch, stop, okay? So you do exactly what it says. You repeat those between the asterisk exactly as many times as it tells you, and it says to the last stitch. Okay, now you can go on to your next instruction, which is knit the last stitch. Okay, so that's what you'll do. You'll knit that last stitch. The next row, when you turn, you're going to go to pattern row 2, and it says purl each stitch. When you get through that, you're going to repeat the rows 1 and 2 to create the pattern. Okay, so you'll do that for the gauge, either 3x3 or 4x4. Usually they're 4x4. Okay, and you want to make sure when you're through that you measure it with your gauge swatch. Your knitting gauge. Remember how we did up here? You want to measure it. In this case, it says it should be 2 stitches should fit in 1 inch. So that's a very bulky yarn. Okay. So then it says here, making the gauge swatch. So to be sure that the sweater will be correct size, begin by making a sample swatch that will let you measure your gauge, as well as give you some practice working with bulky weight yarn. Okay, so basically that's all it says. Alright, so with larger size needle, it's going to tell you what to do. Cast on 18 stitches for that gauge. Okay, so they're saying that the designer of this pattern said 18 stitches should come out to make your swatch. That's all you need. And then it says repeat the rib pattern 1 and 2 like we saw on the gauge instructions right there, right here. And then it says work at least 16 rows and then you bind them off. Okay, right here. See, so on the gauge you're going to work 16 because they're telling you cast on 18 stitches, work 16 of those rows and in that pattern, ribbed pattern, and then you will bind off, and then you should have your, that's your gauge swatch. And so you're going to lay it on the flat surface, and you're going to measure it, and it should come out, and I'm going to show you here. In the picture, it shows you 2 stitches equals 1 inch, right there. You see? And let me lay that up there so I can show you right here, where it's 1, 2. The purl side and the knit side, it's 2 stitches in 1 inch. So when they measure that with their gauge, your knitting gauge, then that's the way it should come out. Okay, so basically, let me get kind of where I was. And if not, remember what I had said about too many stitches and not enough stitches on that the last part we were talking about. So when that gauge is perfect, you're ready to start your work on your cardigan sweater. Okay, so now we're going to go into the instructions. I know that seemed like we were in the instructions already, but actually that was just preparing you for your instructions. Okay, so now you have this cardigan instructions. And it says here again, note. Okay, so you want to read that note. It's very important. Pattern is written for size small. We don't want small, so we had picked 1X, remember? So it is also written with the rib side as the right side. But you can choose whatever side you want as your right side. Okay, so here is the back. It shows back. Well, what's that? Okay, well, this is the back of your sweater. So what they're going to do is they're telling you just for the back of the sweater, this is just the instructions for the back, with a large size needle cast on, and in this case, it shows you a 41. Remember, the small size is first, and the small is usually on the outside of the parentheses. The larger sizes are usually in the parentheses. So you have small, I don't know if you can see that, you have small, small, medium, large, 1X, 2X, 3X stitches. Okay, so we're going to choose, we chose the 1X, so if you think small, medium, large, 1X. So you want to circle that with a pencil. I had a pen, but let's say you wanted to use this pattern again and you wanted to do it for a smaller person or a larger person. You don't want to do it in pen because then you can't erase it. And you're going to want to circle all of these throughout your whole pattern. Because you don't want to, like, all of a sudden go to a smaller size because you forgot which one you were on, okay? So, for instance, down here, I'll show you that. But for right now, you're casting on 53 stitches, not 41 for the small. You're casting on for 1X, so that's 53 stitches. Then you're going to work in pattern. Knit 1, purl 1 is the first row. And it says repeat that and then knit the last stitch. Then you're going to go to the next row and purl. So you're in a ribbing pattern. Then it says repeat 1 and 2 until the garment is, and here's where you see the parentheses again. And this is where you have to be careful. This is for the small size, medium, large, and 1X. So you want to make sure you circle that with a pencil, and you want to go through the whole thing. And every time you see that in parentheses, you want to circle, because you don't want to get to the next instruction and do it for small, and the first part was cast on for the 1X. That would be a terrible thing. You would have to start all over. Okay, so you want to repeat 1 and 2 as a 14 inches. So you're going to repeat the pattern till your garment is 14 inches long. Okay, and then it says down here, there's further instructions even after you've finished the 14 inch to work a wrong side row. Okay, and then it says mark the row by tying on short lengths of yarn in the first and last stitch of that. So you know that's self-explanatory. All right, and then, okay, so then we'll move to the next one. You see where it says, then right up here it says armhole shaping, and then over here it'll say left front. Well, all these instructions are for left front, except well, up to here. Left front row, left front row. Here's armhole shaping. That's for the armhole. Here is the neck shaping, the shoulder. Right front. So that's the right front of your garment. And here again, it's asking you to cast on a certain amount of stitches. You want to make sure that you're on the small, medium, large 1X. Right there, 27 stitches on. Okay? And it might be different from the front, but it might not be. So there's an armhole shaping again for the same pattern. Neck shaping, shoulder, and then it goes back to the sleeve, armhole shaping. This is all for the same sweater. Armhole, cape shaping, and the neck ribbing for the neck over here. And you'll go on, and then it shows you the finishing right here. And you'll see how the pattern's laid out. Once you're finished, you're going to lay all your pieces out together, and then you're going to do your, your seaming, where you put them all together for your sweater. Okay? So I hope that kind of helps you, kind of understand how to work the instructions in what you need to do. So, and again, like this one it said 14 inches length. So if you're talking, some people might want theirs a little longer than that, and that's fine. You can add a couple inches. You might want to go 17 inches because someone might have a longer waist than somebody else, and this might be not long enough. So you can take your piece while you're working it and kind of hold it up, or maybe even take your measurement of how from your underarm to your waistline, and figure out where you want to be, and add that many more inches. So that it's not, but always remember what you do to the front, you have to do to the back. So, anyway, I hope this lesson has helped you a lot, and hope it wasn't too wordy. And I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up and some comments if you need to. And I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great evening.